understanding the importance of not using caffeine when it comes to you transforming yourself, meaning you're actually using a system or a modality to get access to emotional energy and start morphing and transforming that energy to its higher octave. When you're doing this, my encouragement is to not use caffeine, and here's a few reasons why. Number one, if you're not actually experiencing some type of an emotional shift that where not just, you're touching a future possibility, because that always feels great, right? That's always nice and exciting. But it's about like understanding that you also need to be touching parts of you that are unhealed prior to that future possibility. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to help us out with some of this sound. And the reason why you want to touch down into something that's unhealed is because that part of you needs to get connected to the higher part of you. That's why. That's why you want to be able to start it with something that's a little bit more of a lower octave first, make contact with that, and then begin that process of connecting with your higher self, because those two need to be bridged. It's very important. So when it comes to caffeine though, right? So where does caffeine play out in this process? Well, as you're bridging, you could say your higher self with your lower self in this way, you want to start doing this on a regular basis. So my encouragement isn't to, I'm not saying don't go to retreats or don't go to 3-day immersives or don't go to immersions or retreats, right? That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is we need to start bringing that into our daily life and our daily ritual so that we're having these types of experiences on a regular basis and actually transforming our lives on a day-to-day way. Like turning transformation into a lifestyle, is what my old mentor Dale Holloway used to say. So this is the most important aspect, because if you start using caffeine and you start elevating yourself through stimulating yourself, it's an artificial stimulation. Yes, it's natural, but at the end of the day, it still does something to you, and that's why it's not natural. Because your natural baseline, which is you being the baseline here, it's different when you're on caffeine. Sometimes it can definitely bring you to a higher awareness and bring you to more of an alert state of being here. But at the same time, it stimulates you, and it's not your baseline, which means that you're not used to transforming from that place. And you're kind of using that, it can give you higher insights. I'm not saying to never do it, but what I'm saying is that it's probably not the best thing to do before your first session with your new coach, right? Because you want to have that baseline set. You want to know what it's like to transform yourself in your normal, standard state of being. You know what I'm saying? So here's the thing. When you start working with your own energies, when you start experiencing and molding and directing your own energies, especially on an emotional level, when that happens, the way that you do it is going to be very different when you're on caffeine than when you do it when you're not. And the thing here is that you want to have the baseline and your natural state be the default place that you know how to transform from. And then every once in a while you can use caffeine, or if you like to microdose, which I don't do any of it anymore, but another story for another time. But you can do these things every once in a while because it can help you to maybe tweak some of these some of your transformational processes when it comes to relating with yourself on the subconscious level, and even possibly with your higher self. It can certainly aid you and help you in those ways, but it needs to be an addition or an every once in a while type of a thing. At least that would be my recommendation, because again, you want this to be you want to be in your natural state of being ideally all the time. There's no reason to be in some other essence on a regular basis. At least from a transformational perspective, because it's all about creating that baseline of who you are in your natural form. It's kind of like, Goku, right? In Dragon Ball Z. It's like, he doesn't even start transforming into a second and third, forms until he completely wears out his first form. He doesn't elevate himself until he actually reaches the end of his first form, meaning he gets his ass beat, right? And he tries to see how long he can go before he... But my point is that it stimulates your nervous system, and so you're working with your nervous system from a different state of what your normal state is. You want to get your normal state down first, and then you can start kind of every so often, you can play with these. It's kind of like this, like if you train in your base form, right? Like if you train in your base form before you transform, let's say, into a if you use something else to transform. So if you use something outside of yourself to transform, like caffeine or microdosing psilocybin or microdosing things, right? Because a lot of times if people are microdosing, they're not even doing any transformational healing work anyways. But let's just say you are. It's like, when you're transforming from your regular state, your base form, then what happens is that when you do take something else and you start to transform yourself from that place, it actually, training in the base form actually elevates where you're at once you take something external in terms of a stimulant or a catalyst to raise your consciousness. So it's the base form is where it all matters. It's the cellular transformation that's happening. Right now, if you were to constantly be on caffeine or you constantly microdosing, then what happens is as soon as you get off of that, it's like some of that stuff turns into amnesia. You don't even remember. It's not your current permanent state of being. Well, not permanent, but it's not your baseline. It's not your regular state of being. This is what needs to be established, and this is where most of the work should be done, or at least ought to be done from my view, because it's only going to accelerate and expand those times where you do use something external, when it's very intentional and it's very pointed and it's very deliberate in why and how you're doing it. But at the end of the day, here's the last tip here. The key here is to be using a transformational practice as a daily basis. That's the big key here. If you're not doing that and you're not having some type of a transformational healing experience multiple times a week, or even when you're doing these substances, then you're kind of just cheating yourself, and you're thinking that you're using something to get further ahead, but the moment that you come off, here you are again. So it's a little bit of a cheat. Now, what I will say is that what caffeine does is it also gets you moving quickly. It makes you start moving fast. And that can cause you to also skip steps and miss things. Miss cues from your inner child, miss cues from your subconscious. So those are the reasons why you want to keep an eye out for caffeine. Reach out to me, click the link, book a session, book a conversation rather, and we can talk more in detail and figure out how to get you to where you want to go in terms of actually becoming a better coach for yourself, but then also why you might want to advise your clients to do the same thing when it comes to coaching them.